Good morning, students. So, in this class, we are starting with the lecture on early 20th century England. So, I am actually starting my portions with the discussion on the social milieu of early 20th century England. So, I think this is my first class in this semester, and in this semester I will be dealing with the modern age, in which there will be discussions on the social milieu and influences of all those catastrophic events happened, mainly the world wars, and later we will be going to deal with the literature of this period. So in this class we will be starting with the social conditions. What were the general conditions of this period? So, the first 4 decades, the first 40 years of the century, starting from 1900s, it was from taking us from the steam age to the nuclear age. And this age saw both the consolidation of industrial growth and development and a decisive transition towards technologically advanced, mass democratic, and mass consumerist society. And there are evident continuities from the late Victorian period up to the First World War. So we can see the continuities from the previous age, that is the Victorian age, but there are lots of discordance with the Victorian age too. That we will deal with the later part of the lecture. So first of all, you must understand that this is 1900s. It is not completely cut off from the earlier age, that is the Victorian age. We see some kind of continuity from the Victorian age, and we see the cumulative effect of the profound changes which was brought by industrialization, and it actually gave a new temper and texture to society of 20th century. Now Britain became irreversibly urban and increasingly suburban nation. And this era is known as the Edwardian era. And previous age was Victorian age, and the Queen Victoria reigned till 1901. So, with the death of Queen Victoria in January 1901, marked the end of Victorian era, and now comes the era of King Edward VII. It was from 1901 to 1910, and is sometimes extended to the start of the First World War. He was the son and successor of Queen Victoria, and he was already the leader of a fashionable elite, and that set a style influenced by the art and fashions of continental Europe. And Samuel Haynes described that the Edwardian era as a leisurely time when women wore picture hats and did not vote, when the rich were not ashamed to live conspicuously, and the sun really never set on the British flag. And here, in this era, we see the demands of radical reforms and continuous rise of labor movement and the rise of feminism and socialism. So we can say that during this era, there was this democratic and educational reforms which actually gave impetus to more radical demands for reform in the 1900s, and there was this continuous rise of organized labor and of socialism and feminism. And here, most dramatically, we see a whole raft of scientific and technological advances that led to striking material expressions of a new age in the form of motor car, cinema, wireless telegraphy, the aeroplane, and the electric power. And it is said that this is the age, the seething and teeming of pre-war period, its immense ferment and its restless fertility. And this, sadly, it was the devastatingly destructive power of the new machine age that was demonstrated in the Great War and the cataclysmic event which cuts the period into two. The Great War, which cut down the male youth of almost a complete generation. So it was the World War which completely cut the period into two, the century into two, and it cut almost a generation of male youth from the whole population. So it was just a dead, we should say that it was a deadly age, a dark age. And and it should be said that the shadow of the war hung heavily over them, and it, well, though we termed it as the dark age, the more darker age was coming. That was the dark night of the second more devastating war, that is the Second World War. So we were talking about the continuities from Victorian era to early Edwardian times. So we may say that it is tempting to say that to view a turn of century as a major historical turning point with its abrupt and fundamental changes. But you must think that we actually witnessed the turn of a millennium. We saw the rise, we were fortunate or unfortunate to see the rise of a new millennium, 2000. And we know we are part of that experience, recent experience of turning of a millennium. And we know that nothing specific happens with the passing of a landmark calendar date, just as 1900s and 2000s ran into one another with no sudden or profound changes to the structure or fabric of our society, so the 1890s ran into the 1900s, and the only heightened symbolic moment was the death of Queen Victoria in 1900. It was the death of British longest reigning monarch. So we may not think that something great happened with the turn of a century. It is just like passing another date. We lived in 2000. We see January 1st, 2000. It was not something like a new morning, new phase, new society, new fabric, nothing like that. Just like that, 1900s was not something like a profound, brought about a profound change in the fabric of the society. Only thing was the death in January. We saw the death of the longest reigning queen, Queen Victoria. And consonant with the 1890s rebellious insistence on everything new from so it was just continuation of something new which started happening from 1890s. We see the new woman, new unionism, new realism, etc., new spirit, etc. And in this new century, we saw a continuing reaction against what were perceived as, rightly or wrongly, as deeply entrenched Victorian values and attitudes in religion and morality. Although there were no major upheavals, the profound impact of 19th century science, philosophy, and thought continued to be widely felt, and there was a certainly a spreading and deepening crisis of faith among artists and intellectuals who started questioning and searching for alternative systems of belief, and they were influenced by the recently established fields of anthropology and comparative religion. When you take it politically and ideologically, the society continued 1900s. We are talking about the early Edwardian times. The society was more pluralistic and democratic in nature. And we see the continuity of a Victorian trend which moved towards a more diverse social class structure, which was looser and less deterministic. So these were the trends visible from the Victorian times itself. And the continuing expansions in education provision and the gradual restructuring of Britain's industrial base brought about a great social mobility and a further increase in the importance and influence of the lower middle class and sections of the skilled and educated working classes, and the growth in relative prosperity of these groups actually fueled the development of a mass consumer society, which we can see from the Victorian period onwards. And this consumerism not only included consumption of goods and services, but also of literature, arts, entertainment, spectator, sports, and news media. And we also see rapid advances in science, technology, manufacturing, and transport, and it accelerated the rate of material social change as the new century progressed. Along with that, the rate of general cultural exchange was also accelerated by the marked growth of a cosmopolitan culture and international influences, especially in arts. So, here during this period, we see a veritable explosions of isms, ISMS, isms like post impressionism, Imagism, Expressionism, Futurism, Wotticism, Cubism, Dadaism, Surrealism. And all these isms began to revolutionize form, style, and subject matter in almost all artistic genres. Now, coming to the political arena, we see an obvious continuity from the 19th century in the uninterrupted run of a conservative government from 1895 to 1905. And though change was in the air with the founding of the Labour Party and the growth of a militant suffragette movement, and the institutional and ideological patterns of the mainstream political life in Britain broadly mirrored the period of Gladstone and Disraeli. So these are the politicians of the Victorian era, and the new political period too reflected the ideological and political patterns of the earlier era. So I'm trying to give out the point that there are a lot of continuities from the Victorian era to the Edwardian era. It is not something like a new era, new age, and a new phase. Nothing like that. There were all these continuities which happened in every fabric of the society, be it political, social, cultural, everything. It was some kind of a continuation from the Victorian era. So, continuing, we say that All these key political debates and issues of the early 20th century remained largely those of the late 19th century itself. And there was this Irish Home Rule, female suffrage, economic performance relative to international competition, unemployment, the impact of trade unionism, distribution of wealth, income, and education. So there was this continuing drift. Also, there was this continuing drift of population into towns, which maintained existing pressure on the politicians to address problems like urban planning, housing, and health. And there was this continuing agitation on the part of socialists, trade unionists, and suffragettes, which ensured that questions of poverty, labor rights, and equality stayed firmly on the political agenda across the centuries divide. And coming to the world stage, we know that Britain remained a superpower, dominating seas and holding sway over 400 million people and around one fifth of landmass. So, economically, too, Britain's new century carried over many of the dominant features of the mid to late Victorian periods. Despite all these continued widespread poverty and unemployment, stark inequalities between rich and poor, marked regional variations. And the underlying trend of the economy was there was this overall general improvement in living standards and a rise in average real incomes. So on an average, the British economy continued with the Victorian trend of growth in productivity and prosperity right up to the outbreak of Second World War. And we can say that England remained world's greatest trading nation, center of international banking and finance, and as a mightiest global empire in politics as well. So we see the old staple industries of the industrial revolution like coal, steel, mechanical engineering, textiles, clothing. All these things may largely maintain their preeminence in the new century too, alongside buoyant financial and service sectors. And beginning in the 1880s, what is called as second industrial revolution, it became more distinctively 20th century industrial landscape, which was characterized by an increased use of electricity, by various forms of light and precision engineering. We see advanced chemical manufacture, motor vehicle production, and an ever growing variety of mass produced consumer commodities, including newspapers and books, soap, tobacco, ready made clothing, chocolate, domestic appliances, and electrical goods. So we can say that internationally, by the start of the 20th century, Britain started reaping the rewards of early industrialization and it firmly established itself as the world's greatest trading nation, most influential economy. Their currency was sterling. Sterling was viewed as roughly equivalent to gold and was used as an international currency, much as the dollar is today. And this, along with the strength and sophistication of Britain's financial institutions and their large and sustained capital exports abroad meant that Britain was effectively an economic anchor for the rest of the world. So, we may say that on the surface at least, Britain maintained this position of preeminence until the outbreak of war in 1914. That was First World War. So, in this lecture, I was talking about a period from 1900s to 1914, and I was trying to give out the idea that it largely maintained a continuity with the Victorian era. There were all in the area of politics, economy, all these movements, we see radical reforms. We see it was in line with the reforms started in the age of Queen Victoria. And we I hope you know the characteristics of the age of Victorian age, in which you talk about all those radical reforms happening, all those factory acts, all those educational acts, where all these, it was during this period, Victorian age, this public education became compulsory. And you should understand that Edwardian era is in a part continuation of the Victorian era, which took forward all those reforms and movements, and it is nothing like turn of a century brought a profound change. It is nothing like that, but it was actually the World War which actually cut the century into the two. It didn't happen on a fine morning of January 1st, 1900. It was in 1914 that we saw the English society, the England itself, cut into two with that devastating war, with the outbreak of the war. It completely changed the fabric of English society. So, in the next lecture, I will be dealing with the discordance or those discontinuities with the Victorian era. In this class, we were dealing with the continuation, what were the continuities or all those continuing trends of the Edwardian era, which started from Victorian era. Now, in the next class, we will be talking about the nodes of discord, discontinuities. Why is it different? What makes Edwardian era different from Victorian era? So that will be dealt in the next class. So I hope you understood this lecture. If you have any doubts regarding any of these points, please contact me. And you may be not familiar with some of the movements, so you can do your own work, start searching for all these terms like all those isms. It is important, like starting from post like impressionism, whatticism, cubism, dadaism, surrealism. So these are the artistic movements which is important to study for a literature student. So look for all these terms. Please familiarize yourself with all these terms. So right now I'm stopping my lecture. So if you have any doubts, please contact me. You can WhatsApp me or call me. So thank you girls. Have a nice day.